Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back to r/Lifestories, where we read a mix of legal advice, revenge stories and neighbors from hell stories all in one video. If you are new to my channel, please don't forget to subscribe to join our awesome community, and without any further ado, let's dive right into the stories. And the first one starts like this. In 2009, I deployed for a 6-month tour to the Helmand province in Afghanistan. Running at least weekly missions from Leatherneck to now Z, we were the only unit that would run that route in the entire AO. It was that bad. A month into the deployment, I was just getting 6 months into my first real relationship. It was long distance as I was stationed in NC and she lived back home in NY. We were planning on getting married, but my staff sergeant gave me a little speech and I decided that it was best to wait until after the deployment. She was already cheating on me 4 months into the relationship. I took it hard and that is all I thought about for 6 months while I waited to get back home. I had a bunch of her stuff and she had some of mine. I never got any of my stuff back, but she had given me this tiny little dancer trinket to wear on my dog tags. Her mother had given it to her before she ran off, so it had some sentimental value to her. Oh, and 5 months into my deployment, her new level 3 SEX offender boyfriend who she left me for goes back to prison for probation violation. I get a message over Facebook that she just found out she is 6 months pregnant and it is mine. There's no way you just find out you are 6 months pregnant when you weigh 110 pounds soaking wet. It was a sham to get me back, there was no pregnancy. 6 months later, I arrive back home. I go into the subway where she works and lo and behold, she is working. I walk in and she goes, "Welcome to and cuts off mid-sentence as she sees me with a look of absolute horror on her face. I walk in, walk up to the counter, look her dead in the eyes, set the dancer trinket on the counter, shake my head and turn around and walk out. I could hear her start crying before I got to the door. I am much more successful out of the military. I have a great job, an amazing girlfriend and a sweet townhome. I'm about to get a dog here soon. I have never blocked her on Facebook, I just don't see her updates in my newsfeed. She will poke me every once in a while, but I never poke back. It is nice to know that she can watch me be successful without her, and I know her life is in shambles. About once a year she tries to message me and ask me how I am doing, but it usually ends up with her going on some depressing rant about how she effed up and wishes she never cheated on me and left me. And yeah guys, I don't really have much to add to this story, but just that is exactly what cheaters deserve. However, then again, I do feel kind of sad for the future baby, because obviously that kid does not deserve a mom like that. Anyway, the next one starts like this. My dad is not special forces, but he had a super bad temper on him and has been a karate instructor for 45 years. I too grew up with the idea that it was a normal thing to watch your dad square up to people as a result of road rage or indeed any incident where rage might be an applicable emotion. My favorite story of his, however, was one I was sadly not present for or even born yet, but when he was 25 he had an encounter with some bloke over a driving incident. The way he tells it, this guy had been rammed right up the back of him for miles, peppering his dangerous driving with multiple gestures mocking him for having long hair. He was a full-on hippie in his youth, right in the thick of the 70s, and claims it put him on the receiving end of no end of hard treatment. Though, knowing him, I wouldn't be at all surprised if he was just as much to blame for whatever had pissed off this man enough to tail-end him for so long. Anyway, it came to a head when my dad eventually pulled over, too pissed off to keep driving, and this guy pulled over beside him. My dad has spotted that the guy had his girlfriend in the car and reckoned the guy was a wannabe hard-ass who was trying to pick up a fight to impress her. Him having all the appearances of a free-loving pacifist, I guess the guy thought my dad would be an easy fight. What he didn't predict is the uncontrollable fury my dad can reach when prodded one time too many, and as the guy opened the driver door and lifted himself out to meet the gaze of his opponent, my dad had already rounded his car at great speed and without really thinking, flew towards him and roundhouse kicked this guy square in the face. The force of the kick threw the guy backwards into the car, half back in his seat and half in the lap of his girlfriend, whose anticipatory smile had fallen into open-mouthed shock. He was fine, just a broken nose, but my dad's favorite part of the story is the disbelieving bobbies that pulled up soon after, looking at my dad's small, sheepish, wiry frame, framed by long hair and beard, and the tall, hard-ass looking dude with blood gushing down his face, being consoled by his girlfriend and trying to connect the two. And before we go to the next story, which is the title story by the way, please don't forget to like the video and maybe even post some star emojis in the comments if you want to support the channel. Thank you so much in advance, it really helps me a lot. Either way, the story is titled "My brother is dying of cancer and his wife is selling his medicine." My older brother is dying of cancer. He will literally pass any day now. I went to visit him last week and he was so bad off. Apparently worse than others had seen him. I found out his wife has not been taking him to chemo, not feeding him, and selling all his medicine. She is a huge junkie. She literally texted my grandma, "I have the lockbox with his meds. Good luck." I went to visit the place where they reside with a newborn and 5-year-old. I was crying. It was disgusting. I cannot put into words how awful this place was. She apparently leaves the newborn and 5-year-old with my brother and parties all night. Rotten food, dead bugs everywhere, clothes stacked to the ceiling. Meanwhile, she goes out with some other guy and leaves my brother, who can barely hold his head up with the kids. I called CPS that moment. I've never done it before. I find out today she took the kids and ran. I am terrified for them. CPS is apparently looking for them too. I am also scared because apparently she took out a life insurance policy against my brother. I feel she is intentionally letting him suffer to get this money. There is no way to contest this, is there? I want the life insurance policy gone, but she is his wife, so I don't know if it can even happen. How can I help these kids? And the next one is an update to the brother, cancer and wife selling meds story. Hey all, a lot has gone down since that post. My sister is very scared and I am hoping for some advice. We picked my brother up from the trailer and transported him to the care of my grandma. The trailer I mentioned in the last post is owned by my grandma. She doesn't live there, she lives somewhere else. She was letting my brother and his wife stay there rent-free. It is in her name completely and paid off. Here is where I am worried. On this property they had about 6 stray dogs. These dogs were not taken to vet or anything like that. Imagine stray dogs staying around because you feed them. My brother's wife claims these were her dogs. Since my grandma owns the trailer, she gave my sister permission to enter and gather my brother's stuff. My sister called the ASPCA on the dogs to get them home. The dogs were in awful shape. One of them is so bad with mange, we felt we did the right thing. As my sister was taking the animals, my brother's wife shows up. She had been missing with the kids but just shows up. She shows up with 3 junkies. She is angry. She is taking photos. She said she is going to prosecute my sister for trespassing on her property and taking the dogs. My grandma owns this property. This is my grandma's land. She texted my sister, "I have photos of you trespassing on my property and stealing my dogs. I will go to court unless you return them." She also said we were on her property getting my brother's things and we had no right. Also, she knows we called CPS. She said, "I talked to CPS and they are on the same page as me." I know she is lying. My sister called me scared, saying she is worried. Can she be prosecuted for this? I know there are weird rules about people living on property for a certain amount of time, so I am worried. Since the property is owned by my grandma, my brother's wife is talking BS, right? I doubt she has legal standing, but I want to make sure because my sister is anxious. And another update to the brother cancer story. Hey, it's been a while. I will make this short. My brother passed away from cancer on July 24, 2020. My brother's wife was finally evicted from my grandma's property. Myself and many family members had called CPS. The children were taken from her custody. She failed every drug test the court ordered of her. She's been in jail for drug charges and theft for a while now. My mom now has custody of the children and they live with her. They are safe, healthy and doing so well. Watching them grow and learn makes me swell with pride. I see my brother in them so much. I know he would be happy to know they are safe. Thanks for all your help. And the next one, too late to the thread, but this is a good story. Everyone has worked with someone they hated. I've never had a job where there wasn't someone who made my life miserable or whose very presence pissed me off. Usually, you just have to put up with them, but every once in a great while you can get even. Dave was a dick. Stoop-shouldered, balding, in his 50s, Dave was a patronizing and irritating dude. He'd been at IBM his whole career, had been making good money, and hated contractors. He thought they were bad for the company, that the only people worth something were regular employees, and he made it his personal priority to screw with all of us. Nothing overt, but constant subtle pressure was put on everyone whose badge said contractor on it. I think he developed this attitude from working with the guys from India, probably because they were so soft-spoken and accommodating, but maybe he was just a racist. I don't know, but whatever the reason, he took every opportunity to send us on little errands, wouldn't get back to us if we needed something, criticized anything we did, and generally made our lives hell in a way that couldn't be directly protested. I was pretty good friends with the guy sharing the room with him, another full-time employee, and one day Robert called me up. War. We are going for coffee. Okay, let me just finish up a few things. You don't understand. We need coffee now. Right, I headed over to his office and he met me about halfway there. His eyes were shining with glee, but he wouldn't tell me what was going on until we had our coffee in the cafeteria. Once we finally had a table, he said, "Okay, Dave's a fetish wrestler." Huh? He's a fetish wrestler? Dude, I've got nothing. What is a fetish wrestler? It turned out that there were men who pay women to wrestle them into submission. Some of them did it as sort of a hobby and others were extremely serious about it. Dave was one of the latter. Several times a year he would tell his wife he was meeting up with old army buddies but went to fetish wrestling conventions instead. They were highly organized, had rings set up for use, referees to score the matches and everything. I never quite understood the need for referees, but hey, it is not my fetish. There were web pages devoted to women who were available to wrestle, and Dave's favorite was a woman named Red Robin. She was a tiny little woman who was an absolute beast, and he paid her thousands of dollars every time he would go to one of these conventions for her to wrestle him for about 20 minutes per match. We went back to my office and pulled up Red Robin's website. Why does he pay this woman to wrestle him? He says no. Let me get this straight. Dave lies to his wife, flies out to California to have an ugly woman named Red Robin wrestle him into submission and pays her $400 per match. Yep, that is BS. I went on to the main wrestling site and started reading Dave's posts. And there were a ton of them. He talked in great detail and depth about the sport, had invented his own move called the Twisted Ostrich, and told stories about amazing matches he had won and lost. Look, I'm all about people's private lives remaining private, and I probably wouldn't have done anything if he hadn't so consistently been a douchebag to me. But he had, so game on. I registered a fake account under the name Suplex on the wrestling website and started corresponding with him. I started by asking him some technical questions about the Twisted Ostrich, but it wasn't long until he started asking me personal questions. As time went by, I fleshed out the character, so within about a month he had become quite good friends with Miss Plex. I told him I was a late 20s single lawyer living in DC. My marriage had ended because my husband just did not understand my interest in such a harmless sport. It was so nice to talk to someone like him who really understood me. It was unbelievably satisfying. Every time he would send me on some stupid errand, I would think of how he was confessing his private life to the character I had created. Oh, and he lied his ass off. He dropped a good 10 years and his wife somehow. Finally he asked for a picture, and well, I had already downloaded a whole set of a girl who looked about that age, and the photos did not look professional. I started with a simple one and he gushed about how hot I was. Over the next few weeks I sent him more and more photos, each more revealing than the last, until the girl was fully nude but didn't look posed. He started trying to be really sexy and started talking about how the best way to end a good wrestling match was with sex. Hold the phones! He had told Robert that there wasn't any sex in the matches. I probed a bit and he finally admitted he had intercourse with the girls he wrestled. I knew it. They were ladies of the night working a special kind of crowd. It made more sense he was spending $400 per match. I amped up the sexy talk too, including wrestling into it. It was gold. He was hooked, his work slowed down, he became obsessed with suplex, and quite frankly, my work suffered as well, having to answer all his notes. Fortunately, he didn't notice because he was too busy sending off love letters. Now it was driving me nuts because here was this creepy 50-ish guy who was still giving me a daily ration of crap but was secretly having an online affair with a character I had created. Robert and I had a ton of fun effing with the poor guy, but one day he called me up again. War, coffee, now. At the cafeteria he told me that Dave had another army reunion coming up and we should see if we could get him to come to DC to meet Sue instead. Genius. I sent Dave an email and said we should get together sometime. Boom! In a flash he responded that he'd been thinking the same thing and had some time off in a few weeks. Would I be interested in him coming to visit? Yes I would. As Sue, I arranged to meet him in DC at a local hotel. As the day approached, Dave became more and more excited and screwed with us less and less. He still tried, but the conviction and heat was not there anymore. Robert and I were going nuts, having to act like nothing was going on while Dave prattled on about how happy he was to hook up with his old army buddies, what a fun trip it would be, etc., how he was hoping he didn't get pinned down by the snow. I guess he thought he was being clever, but since we already knew the entire story, it just came across as pathetic. He left early on a Friday to catch his flight, smiling like a champ. Tuesday morning he showed up looking like his best friend had died. We asked what was wrong and he tried to play it off like he was just tired from his long weekend, but as soon as he could he sent Sue a message asking what the hell had happened and why hadn't she showed up. We waited to respond until after lunch. He was a basket case. Finally we fired back a furious message that we had called his house on Friday just to leave him a message, and some woman answered. We said we had pretended to give her a survey and we knew about his wife and 4 kids. So he'd been lying to us all along. Basically, we went bad crap crazy on him. We told him if he ever tried to contact us again, we would tell his wife everything. We waited for him to get the email, watched him surreptitiously read it, and then we watched him have a meltdown. He started sweating like crazy, called his wife to check on her, and finally left early. He was never the same after that. He pretty much stopped messing with contractors and kept to himself. We never sent him any more emails and he never sent any to Sue. My contract ended not too long after that, and that was the last I heard of him. It couldn't have happened to a nicer guy. And the next one is titled, Disabled Veteran Could Not Care for His Lawn, Homeowners Association Put a Lien on His House. A disabled Texas veteran is in the biggest fight of his life. Even more challenging, he says, than his deployments in the Middle East after his HOA has put liens on his home for thousands of dollars in fines for not maintaining his yard according to standards. Being disabled, he says he cannot do the yard work and the Homeowners Association is just going to have to accept that. Retired Army Staff Sergeant Daniel served 4 tours of duty in Iraq and Afghanistan. In 2009, while serving in Afghanistan, he stepped on an improvised explosive device, IED, placed by an insurgent and almost lost his life. For a while, it looked like we would not leave Afghanistan alive. Fortunately, army medics were able to save his life. 7 years and 30 surgeries later, the disabled veteran has had amputations and suffers from PTSD. He admits that he has difficulties adjusting to civilian life, including being a sole parent to his 11 and 12-year-old children. I was always deployed, he says. The Purple Heart winner also suffers from PTSD, but the biggest adjustment he's had to face in civilian life is being a homeowner. The disabled veteran lives in the suburban neighborhood of Hunter Grove, and homeowners in Hunter's Grove, like homeowners in neighborhoods all over the country, belong to an HOA. HOAs are notorious for being punctilious about their exacting and arcane standards, as well as for aggressively hassling homeowners who don't meet those standards. For Daniel, the Hunter Grove Homeowners Association has taken exception to how he has kept up his yard and fence, as well as, of all things, where he keeps his trash can. Daniel would not say what problem specifically the HOA has with his trash can placement, and the HOA's 22-page list of rules and regulations does not mention trash cans. Regardless of where the HOA wanted the trash cans, Daniel could not keep them there due to being disabled. And as for the yard work, once again, says Daniel, he's disabled and uses a wheelchair and cannot do yard work. And neither can his kids, being preteens. Regardless of his limitations, the HOA has cut the disabled veteran exactly 0 slack. The covenants state that the HOA can punish violations with fines. Daniel won't say specifically how much, but he says it is thousands of dollars. And since Daniel cannot or won't pay, the HOA has put a lien on his house. As many a homeowner has found out to their dismay, there's little to nothing you can do when your HOA comes after you. When you purchase a home in a neighborhood with an HOA, you are signing a private contract and are legally bound to its terms. About all you can do is sue and hope you prevail in court, or take your story to the media and hope the publicity publicly shames your HOA into backing off. The disabled Texas veteran is hoping that sharing his story with the media will put pressure on his HOA to cut him a break. And guys, obviously I'm not American, so I'm not equally emotionally invested in veterans as you are, but I can definitely understand that something is happening here that should not be happening. I mean, this guy obviously did a great service to your country, and he's raising 2 kids on his own as far as I understood, and still the HOA cuts him 0 slack. Let me know in the comments what you think about this story. And by the way, of course, I know you would be rioting if I did not give you an update, so I specifically searched for one and was successful. The update reads like this. After publishing the story, calls and emails from around the state culminated into an organized effort to help Sergeant Daniel sort out his troubles, and among those stepping up to help were State Representative Scott Holcomb, a Democrat, and Jeremy Berry, a well-known attorney for Dentons. A GoFundMe was established after a suggestion by readers, and some even chose to send donations directly to Sergeant Daniel. The response was overwhelming. Between the 2 fundraising efforts, nearly $2,500 was raised to aid in settling outstanding fees, find a lawn care service, and even get ahead on 2017 HOA dues. And Rep. Holcomb and Jeremy Berry worked with the attorney representing the HOA, and the 2 parties were able to come to an amicable agreement. Most importantly, the lien will be lifted, and an area landscaping company came forward and will provide lawn care for at least the next year. Additionally, an organization has contacted the sergeant to assist in building an addition onto his home to provide for a bedroom and bathroom on the downstairs level. Currently, injuries and disabilities make getting up the stairs very difficult. But that is not the end of it. A community benefit ride will be held on April 15th to raise money through raffles, food, fun and fellowship that will go directly to Sergeant Daniel and his 2 children. The power of community and the internet is amazing. And the next one is titled, Damn it, it actually happened to me. I have said on here many times I would never ever buy in an HOA. I have almost 4 acres, meets and bounds in the county, with chickens, sometimes goats and pigs or other livestock. So my back 2 acres have grown over, no goats right now, and while I love blackberries, they are taking over. So I rented a skid steer this weekend and started clearing to the back of my property, something I have not done in years. Well, the back of my property, there is a creek, not quite within the property lines for me, so I don't have access to it, and there is a typical planned subdivision, I'm sure with an HOA, not sure, don't care, that is, butts up to my property. And well, I'm happily knocking down trees and piling them up along my property line, and one of the neighbors walks over through the woods and says, "You cannot do that with the 200-foot easement." Excuse me? I have no effing 200-foot easement. That would be half my property I cannot use. She insists there is a 200-foot easement for the creek. What the hell? That is usually 20 feet for creeks. So she brings over a copy of her deed. I've been here 16, almost 17 years now. I don't actually have a copy of my deed handy because why would I? Anyway, long story short, her property is 419 feet deep by about 120 feet wide, and yep, there is in fact a 200-foot easement for U&D, utility and drainage for her. My sister is a real estate agent, so I had her pull my deed up, and nope, no such easement for me. Good job buying a house that you cannot use half your property because it is all an easement. The next one is titled, Am I the a-hole for not inviting the neighborhood snitch or the HOA board to our neighborhood barbecue? There is around 10 houses in my neighborhood of 120 that are not in the HOA, mine included. We or previous owners were smart enough to not join the HOA. As a result, I am able to make extensions, and I have a pool which I host neighborhood parties occasionally. My HOA is one of the worst HOAs, constantly fining people hundreds of dollars for parking violations, painting their fence the wrong shades of brown, wrong color curtains, having 2 flags, etc. They are not the worst HOA, but they are bad. We also got a crappy neighbor, Jessica, who likes to go around and snap photos of people's violations and then post it on the Nextdoor app to shame them. She prides herself in this, thinking it makes the neighborhood better when she shames the neighbors for having a fence that is 2 inches too high, or the Johnsons for having light brown doors instead of a dark brown door. Jessica is a effing female dog. She has probably cost neighbors thousands of dollars in fees or forcing them to renovate. I absolutely lost my crap when Jessica posted in the Nextdoor app about how Mrs. Jensen, an 85-year-old woman currently having serious medical issues, has a lawn that is a couple inches too high. She obviously cannot mow the lawn and was too busy to notice. The HOA then fined her $500. I made a post in the Nextdoor app about the Nextdoor app saying that the suburban fascists on the HOA board, not Jessica, were invited to my barbecue at my house. Jessica went on a rant saying how much of an angel she is and how she protects the neighborhood doing her duty, and I told her she's a low-life scumbag busybody and is a pathetic loser with nothing better to do. A couple people said I was bullying and excluding her, and like 4 of her friends are boycotting my party and hosting their own party. The party happened and nobody else showed up to theirs, and ours was a blast. She apparently cried over it. So guys, I'm curious, would you say OP, aka the creator of this story, is the a-hole or not? Let us know in the comments. And Ripe Stars, unfortunately we have already reached the end of today's video. I hope you enjoyed the content. However, if you cannot wait for more Ripe content, then I suggest you head on over to patreon.com/ripeyoutube, where you can find more exclusive Reddit content read by me. Patreon subscriptions start at just $1 per month, and for $1 your name will show up at the end of each of my new videos. However, if you are willing to spend $3 per month, you will get access to more than 50 exclusive Reddit videos, mostly just no mother-in-law stories. However, please understand, I don't want to pressure anyone into spending money, because I am already incredibly grateful that you watch my videos every single day. Thank you so much for your daily support, it really means the world to me, and I hope to see you again tomorrow for the next video.